Jack, it's great to be with you this sunny afternoon.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Richard. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for the invite. It's a lovely day.
Data science principal at Aiimi. What's your day job then, Jack?
That's a very good question. So the role is actually quite new to me. So I think for the last 5 years, I've been a data science consultant. And recently I've moved into this data science principal role, which is a bit of a change to the normal for me. I'm used to being out there, flying away to different clients and dealing with them, whereas this is starting to look a little bit more internally at what we do in a broader sense in AI and data science as Aiimi, and obviously how that links into our product, Insight Maker, which is a discovery tool.
Okay, let's dive into this question about privacy. So you're going to be addressing the audience this tomorrow at MKAI, where we're talking about AI for good. The point of that session is not to spend all of our time talking about avoiding bad in AI. How do we protect things? How do we make things explainable? Actually, what fundamentally is AI doing that's good? But you and I want to talk a little bit about privacy. And to set the tone on that, to set the scene, I guess we have to just explore what privacy we are protecting. So big question to start with. What is privacy? Is it a basic human right?
I think that's a very good question. It's a broad thing. We do a lot of talk about privacy, and especially in the context of AI, and indeed AI for good. Particularly relevant recently, obviously with the increasing prevalence of misinformation on social media, and actually just the fact that everybody's lives are digital. Right? You look at sort of maybe younger politicians and things like that, and they're getting things dredged up from their social media past, and it's sort of a new age, and it's a generation where we've never seen things like that happen before. So I think you must have to redefine what you mean by privacy, just because technology enables us to be so open and everything to be so freely available. And where's the stop tap on that?
Well, I know that you're a fan of some of the work that goes on, particularly by the big corporates in tech, about making things open, making models open source, allowing people to input and output in and out of those, which creates incredible power. And I guess much of our success on a much broader scale in business and beyond is the power of the crowdsourcing, crowd wisdom, crowdfunding. But that's a sharing economy, isn't it? That's a trusted economy where we're happy to help people understand what we are, what we're doing, what we need, what we want. And so I guess we're not trying to keep all of our data secret. We're trying to, I guess, know when the door is open and when it's closed to start with, aren't we?
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's been a lot of, certainly if you look at the early days of social media and broadly speaking the internet, that's not really been clear. But obviously, increasingly so, people are talking about data as having value to it, and people are saying that data and information is the new oil. You look at like when you sign up to Twitter, right? You're signing up to Twitter and you're signing a contract with Twitter. It's all these massive long terms and conditions. Especially, you're getting the service of being able to use Twitter, but you're paying for that not with money, but with the information that you give to Twitter. Or maybe a better example is actually Facebook, because I think they don't make, or they have been outed as having found some quite creative ways to use people's data.
Let's talk about Facebook for a minute. There's an army of people now saying that Facebook purposely was set up to get as much data as possible, to use it as extensively as possible. And they had this motto, didn't they? Move fast and break things. And I think maybe it was Dave on the call last night, Dave Troy, who said they'll break things even if it's societies. And
yes. Yes, well, I mean, dangerous words. Obviously, Cambridge Analytica springs to mind, doesn't it? There's little regard for what that data was used for. It was just, well, we can sell this data, so why not? Obviously, people actually weren't happy with their data being used that way, and I think people are a lot more conscious of that now than they were before that.
So switch gears for a moment away from your professional job to you, Jack, the individual. I guess there's 4 risks to any data that you share onto the internet or through devices. And that's what we were just describing there, kind of a big corporate entity accessing it and using it in ways that aren't clear. Then, of course, there's good old-fashioned hackers, isn't there? People just trying to get your data nefariously, don't know who they are. Then there's the government and what they, I mean, in theory, they're good guys, but a lot of inconsistency, even here in the UK, let alone across the world, about exactly what and why the government needs that data and what they're doing with it. And the fourth would be some kind of breach, some kind of loss, accidental or otherwise, where it just goes out and you don't know what's happened to it. I guess they're all important, but what do you think about the most in terms of threats to your personal sovereignty?
If I'm honest, I think I don't take, I know I speak to a lot of people in tech, and they talk about, obviously because they know so much about what can be done with this information. Obviously, if you have the desire and motivation, actually it's quite scary, the amount of information that is out there about individuals. Because me personally, it doesn't concern me maybe as much as it ought to. I quite naively think that, well, if you want to target me, yes, there's a lot of information out there, but my data is just a drop in a pool of millions of people's data out there on the internet. So I suppose I'm not too concerned about my own personal risks, because I personally don't have anything to hide. I'm not expecting that anyone would pin down or do anything malicious towards me specifically. But I think as a wider social issue, actually, you look at things like when you're using it to influence, politics and people's voting and what people as a community think and feel, for your own personal gains. I think that is very scary. Obviously, it's not an attack on me specifically, but it is an attack on, I suppose, our way of life.
I think it is. How much of that way of life we should or could hang on to is a slightly separate question. As Saeed's just weighed in with some thoughts as well, which is great to see, pointing out that people don't mind about privacy until they realize the implications of why they should mind. I think perhaps he's reflecting on things like quotes from Edward Snowden, where he said basically saying that you've got nothing to hide and therefore there's no problem with this. It's like saying we don't need freedom of speech because I've got nothing to say. It's bigger than that, and it's you've still got something to protect even if you don't have something to hide, and that protection is more of a concept than it is an individual piece of data. But what about these platforms? Because I say to people when they jump on the podcast, like, no, it's my material. I will use it as I wish. Now, they trust me not to have nefarious plans with that, and I don't sell it, but I hold the right to sell it in the future or gain commercial value from it in the future. And I sit down, I edit these podcasts, and I realize that I could really steer the conversation to be read a certain way, and you have to make choices about, because we obviously can't put everything in, so we have to choose some of it and make sure that the nuances aren't changed and people are represented, yet still we have a kind of commercial offering in terms of being quick and to the point. So a couple of questions there about, is it okay for companies like mine to own that data and then interpret that data, or if we just open that big can of worms again in the Twitter and the Facebook debate about what their role is as broadcasters?
I think you're quite right. It is a can of worms. So obviously, as I said before, that you sign up to one of these platforms and you share the data, like I'm sharing my data with you when I join a podcast. There is contracts associated with these things. Obviously, for our podcast, there's a verbal contract. Obviously, when you sign up to Facebook or Twitter, there's this big long list of terms and conditions that people don't really read. People assume that the contract is that your data will be used reasonably. That's not necessarily the case. I suppose pivoting the conversation back to AI specifically, you have a broader question there, and actually sometimes when you're producing an AI model, you don't know what the outcome is necessarily going to be. So how can you consciously not use someone's data to do a certain thing? When you're building a complicated like neural network model and you're trying to predict what product to advertise to someone, you're using all of their data potentially, and how can you safely say that you're not doing something irresponsible, drawing irresponsible conclusions like advertising a product to someone based on their ethnicity?
Yes, very difficult to do, and you have that perception as well. Got a comment here as well. It's anonymous. says great discussion. And you talk about that privacy trade-off again, convenience and inclusion. They're two very interesting points. My friend Raj from MRSIS, he says we're always going to give in to convenience. That's what we've always done, what we're always going to do, whether that be Facebook or Elon Musk's chips in your brain. And this inclusiveness that you sort of have to play by Facebook's rules, or you can't play at all.
Yeah, so it's a very valid point. Platforms like that almost have a monopoly. I think maybe Facebook less so than it used to, but certainly you think back to sort of boom period of Facebook. If you wanted to have that kind of social interaction, you were on Facebook. There was no other place to go and do that. And I suppose to an extent it's still there, right? If your friends are on Facebook and you want to interact with your friends, where else would you do that? It's like we're streaming on YouTube. That's because YouTube is accessible to people. So we are quite willingly allowing Google to process our data for convenience.
And the convenience is and will continue to be quite stunning. Another comment there, perhaps from the same user, that we don't want to admit that we really do want these companies to understand and know about us. I think particularly, Jack, about things like Alexa. Maybe booking a holiday on Alexa could be an incredibly easy experience and still get you great value. That assumes that we'll be able to travel again at some point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the point is, I'm reading it now, to actually enrich our online experience. And I think that's something I see more and more now, obviously, since they brought in this law where if you go on a website, you have to approve cookies. Websites have started making the case that actually you're approving cookies, not because, we want your data, it's actually because we want to give something back to you. And it is that enriched experience element, which is, I believe in, and I think it's actually data is valuable, hopefully, both to the company and to me. Sharing that data should give something back for myself. So I do believe in that. But it's a grey line, isn't it? Because obviously you're sharing that data on the assumption, it's an assumed contract, that data is going to be used responsibly. It's going to be used to give you things you want, like an improved experience. Maybe Alexa's going to know what sort of holiday I would like to go on best, and I can trust her to handle that for me. But what other information is Amazon? Sorry, what other purposes is Amazon going to use that information for? Do I really know what they all are? And can Amazon even tell me what they all are, especially if they're using, complicated artificial intelligence models? It's not always easy to step back and say, well, this model has made this decision because of X, Y, Z. AI isn't always easily explainable.
No, often not. The explainability versus the benefit of the AI can sometimes be in contrast. And what you're describing there about Alexa, yes, there's some questions around what data is being harnessed, but as much as Amazon might be learning about you, they're also sort of creating you in a way, because if we go back to the holiday example again, they're looking to see what holiday you want. So there's an element of pushing you into that echo chamber. And you could end up taking the same holiday every year if you just left it down to Alexa, because that's what you like. But it doesn't take you out of that to experience something that you don't like, and that can be a good thing.
Yeah, indeed. It's tailoring our life, isn't it, according to essentially the rules that the machine's built up, or if you wanted to get really, what's the word I'm looking for? Questioning. I'll go with questioning. You could say, well, what if Amazon decided that they wanted to make a deal with a particular holiday provider and actually promote that in Alexa? And because Alexa's always given me good holidays so far, why should I doubt that this new provider isn't anything but just there because it would be great for me?
Yeah, it's a big one. And Luke Rawlins, your colleague, has just weighed in as well with a really interesting point. So Luke's asking about what if we could pay Facebook then to use it instead, which is we don't have the option at the moment. So some friends of mine at UCL, Adriana Torres, Emmerich Kazim were talking about this in an event I went to, and they estimate about $20 a month. If we all paid that, the active users, then Facebook's revenues would be the same as they are now.
That would cover their ad and data sort of.
But Luke, I sense that misses a point, because Facebook is not designed as a user experience. It's not designed for the customer. Amazon is not designed for the customer. Don't let it fool you. Amazon is designed to maximize profit some of the customer experience, you try selling stuff on Amazon, the customer experience there is terrible. It's not designed, it's not supposed to be good. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to make money. The point of Facebook is to make money. So flipping it around to give the same service and just charging for you, I think it would break the business model. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I agree. Because I think part of, actually, right, obviously, it is there to an extent for the customer, but only when that's convenient, when that makes money, right? There's a good shopping experience for me as a consumer on Amazon because it's in their interest to provide me with that good experience because it means I'm more likely to buy things. But paying for an experience is a negative thing, right? And it's going to be very hard to sell that. I mean, we do it. We do pay for convenience. Look at things like Netflix. That's a subscription model. And I pay for my Netflix subscription every month. And I don't actually watch that much television on Netflix, but I pay for the convenience of having Netflix there. I suppose I pay for Amazon Prime as well, which is the convenience of next day delivery. So there are elements that can be transitioned to that pay model. To my knowledge, nobody's done it for a social network yet, at least not successfully.
I guess your consumption of Netflix does give some data, but nothing like the sort of data that Facebook would be extracting from a typical user. Therefore, it needs a different business model. Saeed just went in again here. He said 99% of people he's spoken to say they don't mind. But this is that awareness thing again, isn't it? And that it's not that you've got something to hide. They don't care what sexy sites you go on, right? That's not the point of this.
Exactly. Well, they're not. They've no interest in drilling down to an individual person, making a fool of them, unless that person maybe is a public figure, in which case maybe it's slightly different. But obviously, for the average individual, I don't believe that there's really any of that going on. But this business, as we say, it's the broader implications of what this means when everybody is providing that data and the dangers that can bring with it.
Yes. And he says, can you point a Telegram app? I don't know, Jack. Do you have an answer to that one?
A Telegram app? I'm not sure. Is that a bit like WhatsApp?
It is, yeah. It's the data scientist's preferred version of WhatsApp. So actually, I want to share a quick point on that since we brought up the messaging services about metadata and data. So one example I give is that if you are on WhatsApp sending messages, and then you get in your car and you drive across town, you spend about an hour at a new address and then come back again, you don't need to see the data to have a pretty good idea of what the metadata is telling you about what that person's doing. When they're on Tinder or whatever, it's pretty clear how they're spending their time. So you can get a really good picture of somebody without actually reading what they're saying.
No, that's a really interesting way to think about it. So as you think about WhatsApp, and it is, I suppose, I think they might have put a back door in now, mightn't they? But certainly originally WhatsApp was always supposed to be end-to-end fully encrypted, so that information was not visible. But you're right in saying that you can piece things together, right? A single piece of information on its own might be completely meaningless, but as soon as you start to know several different things about a person, it almost sometimes doesn't matter if that's anonymized, you still might be able to work out pretty well who that person is. We're thinking about these kind of issues for our product Insight Maker. So we want to be able to build artificial intelligence models on the documents that we are crawling with Insight Maker. So this is obviously for the purposes of improving user search experience. As you go on, I want to find all the documents that are, say, invoices. And because we've ran an artificial intelligence model over, it can tell you, well, this document, this is an invoice, because I know it's an invoice. Obviously, invoices maybe not too sensitive, but as soon as you start going into particularly things like HR records, we really don't want to actually just be giving our data scientists access restricted to HR records to build a model to predict what a HR record looks like. So you want to do something to anonymize that HR record, but without sort of missing the point. You can obviously go through and you can find all the instances of personally identifiable information in the document, and you can just strip them out, and that would make it impossible to work out who that document's about. But what if you wanted to build a model that looked at records for a specific person and link that person over multiple records? Like, this is a HR document saying this person's got a pay rise and this is their initial offer letter. You actually kind of want to associate those documents, but in order to build a model to do that, you need to know they're associated. So you could just blank out the name and replace it with a number. You could hash it. But how many pieces of data do you need to actually work it out, right? If I know that someone started an organization around a certain time and they probably got a pay rise a few months later, it doesn't matter that their name's not on that document for me to work out who it's about.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't take long, and there's been some studies in the past where they've done this with MPs and shown them how easily their data can be reconciled back to them that they thought was anonymous. It's a stark view. Jack, thanks so much. We look forward to continuing the conversation tomorrow night. That's MKAI, 5 p.m. UK time. Just check out my feed or Aiimi's to see the registration links. Really good chatting with you, Jack. Heavy stuff for a lunchtime. But,
yeah, no, it's been excellent. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for having me. And yes, we'll be seeing you all again tomorrow.
Look forward to it. And thanks for everybody that tuned in and contributed. Very, very useful.
Right, super. Thanks again.